Story 1. Nowadays, as a 32-year-old, I get silence and a blank stare. We're over 30. Why are you trying to act like we're in high school? When I was actually in high school, I behaved very badly. Story 2. Honestly, I laugh at them because bullies are looking for a reaction. Story 3. I start agreeing with them until they become uncomfortable. Story 4. Agree until they leave you alone. Sarcasm. Or make them mentally uncomfortable. Story 5. Yes. Glad you noticed and thank you. They can't deal with affirmation. Story 6. You talk awfully big for someone in dick-sucking distance. Story 7. I used to call their bluff because all they do is mouth off but never follow through. The only exception is when their crew is around, when they might act just to avoid appearing weak to their mates. The tactic of bullying is to instill fear. If you do not fear them, they are powerless. Story 8. When I moved to the Southwest, I taught myself Spanish so I could fit into my new community better. When a bully starts, I speak Spanish and they walk away. In my lifetime, every bully I have encountered was a white man. I'm 80 years old. Story 9. I am legitimately just ignoring them and not engaging. At least that is what I want to get to. Story 10. It is against Reddit's site-wide rules for me to give an honest answer to this question. Story 11. Just say, damn, you're as turned on as I am. They will leave you alone. Story 12. It depends on the situation. I was bullied as a kid, so I have many strategies to deal with it. For the most part, one, try to respond with humor because it disarms someone without escalating the situation. Other times, I simply turn my back and walk away. Sometimes questioning them works because it forces them to address their own behavior and defend it, which tends to leave them sputtering. Story 13. Bully them back. The best way to conquer a bully is to show them that you are better at what they are trying to do. Story 14. I usually ignore them, but if things get heated, I will throw the first punch. Story 15. I laugh. No one can bully me better than I can bully myself. Story 16. I am a grown adult, not a child on the playground. Unless the bully is your boss or landlord, most adults can handle the situation without having to run back to their parents. Story 17. I was only ever bullied when I rushed a fraternity about 28 years ago. It did not go well. As my pledge brothers and I stood blindfolded in a basement at attention, one of the brothers started yelling in my face. I did not care much until he threw a beer in my face. At that point I tore off my blindfold, grabbed him by the collar, and yelled, "You don't do that to me. You don't throw shit in my face, asshole." One of my pledge brothers then told me to shut up and get back in line. The brother also told me to fall in line. I told him that if he did that again to me or my pledge brothers, I would bury him in that basement. He did not do it again, but I was not voted in. That was fine with me. I learned then that I would not take shit from assholes. Story 18. Ask them to explain why they are saying that and why they think it is okay to speak to another adult that way. Story 19. Well, I would have agreed with you, but then we would both be wrong. Dave Oconio. Story 20. These days, I skip the preliminaries and go straight to the chokeslam. Story 21. Maybe I wear glasses because I am nearsighted. Story 22. Nothing will frustrate an asshole more than treating their insult like it's a compliment. Story 23. I am 52. It has been quite a while. The last time it happened, I calmly questioned them about what they were doing and what their goal was. I made it no fun for them. Story 24. Mock them. Make them look like the juvenile morons that they are. Some of my favorites, besides the standard bless your heart, are, I am sure your father is proud of the person you are trying to become. I will bet your grandmother is proud of your manners. And a personal favorite, I am so sorry you were expelled from charm school. Clive Staples Lewis had it right. Mock that which is evil and it takes away its power. Story 25. I was bullied online for a special interest, so I began sending the person trivia about that interest until they gave up. Story 26. Block and move on. This works both online and in person. Story 27. I sit down on the couch in the living room of the house I bought, roll up a joint, and then go about my day. Story 28. As a teenager, I sometimes used the out-crazy them tactic. When a bully challenged me, I would do something outrageous, like aggressively bark like a dog in their face or make some other disruptive, combative vocal response. On one memorable occasion, I swung my lunch tray at a linebacker who thought physically bullying or shoving me would be a good idea. As a 46-year-old recluse, I don't get bullied by anyone except the government. Story 29. I'm an adult, so I usually stare blankly and wait for them to get bored and move on. It's honestly amusing to see people who clearly never matured past high school. Sometimes I troll them back when they won't leave me alone. For example, a middle-aged man with a receding hairline in my apartment complex made comments whenever I passed him in the halls or was in the laundry room. I would pretend I misheard him and thought he was complimenting me, then respond cheerfully, "Wow, thank you. That's so kind, you too," which made him grumpier. He would usually get frustrated and sulk off to whatever corner of the building he came from, laughing out loud. His name is Frankie, so I would call him Francis loudly and cheerfully, smiling and say, "Is everything okay, Francis?" That annoyed him, but if he didn't want it back, he shouldn't treat people like crap. If you can dish it, you should be able to take it, laughing out loud. Story 30. That depends on the bully, the remarks, and my tolerance level that day. I have done the following. I just stared at them, amused. Sometimes I ask if they are okay, then laugh. I walked away. I laughed more as they spoke because they sounded foolish. I offered a sharp retort in defense of someone like a relative. I slapped someone across the face in front of a crowd when they refused to stop after repeated insults. The last one surprised everyone. I was 13 years old and known as the awkward disabled one with no friends. Story 31. Ask them if they are okay. People like that become very angry if you show them kindness. Story 32. As a middle-aged woman, I usually say, "Wow, that was incredibly inappropriate." I also respond with a simple, pleasant, "Excuse me?" or "I'm sorry, what was that?" This forces them to repeat the ridiculous thing they just said, and often they tone it down. If they double down, I say, "Yeah, I think I am going to go," and leave the room, the call, or the situation. If it is at work, I report it to my upline or supervisor, or I run it by a trusted coworker first to make sure I am not overreacting. But I never give in to the request or let them see me sweat. Story 33. When I was young, I ignored verbal bullies as much as possible. I really did not care until someone put their hands on me. I never liked to fight, but that was because I was that kid. Fair was not a thing for me, and it tended to get me in trouble when I responded to a bully. I would pick up whatever was in reach to give myself an advantage. I stood my ground with everything from a rolled-up magazine to a metal lunch pail. Such things would be frowned upon these days. If someone called me ugly, I would say yes, my mama tied a pork chop around my neck so the dog would play with me. If they called me fat, I would say yes, it is a blessing to have enough and a mama who is a good cook. In the first case, any further insult only proves they are an absolute dick, lowercase d. In the second, they can only admit that their mama cannot cook or that they do not have food. In both cases, it is on them to dig their own hole deeper. Story 34. Make them laugh. It's hard to bully someone when they make jokes at their own expense. Story 35. Raise one eyebrow, then walk away with an eye roll. I do not give a fuck who likes me and who does not. Story 36. I get put out and just figure out a way around them. If you aren't with me, get out of my way. Story 37. Many eons ago, when I was in junior high and high school, I had a bully. I hated her so much. Then I decided I would not let her get to me, and I would be really sweet to her. I would say hi to her in the hall and be nice to her. She hated it. It drove her nuts that she could not upset me anymore because I was being nice to her. So it did not take long before she stopped bullying me. Story 38. I laugh, or I just pretend not to have heard them. I used to be very reactive, but that's how they like it. Story 39. I do not tolerate bullying. A neighbor tried to intimidate us. I stood up to her and called the police repeatedly. She eventually stayed away. Story 40. Original poster, you probably should have put an age range on this. If you are in high school and looking for advice, you may get better responses. Keep in mind the age range of Reddit users is very large. Bullies in school are a real threat, and it is good to seek advice on dealing with them. Bullying adults are better ignored. If bullies are in the workplace, involve human resources. The age range really matters here. Story 41. I would feel disbelief. I'm not easily bullied, and my first response would most likely be to walk away. Story 42. Are you done? They asked, as if they were a toddler having a tantrum. Story 43. I am an adult, so I can choose not to deal with them and remove myself from the situation. Story 44. Laugh really uncomfortably hard. Then very loudly ask, are you trying to make fun of me? Ask the question again. Story 45. I remember, as a kid, some people tried to bully me because of my interests. My response to their negative comments was always upbeat. I would say, yeah, I love Star Wars. They gave up when they saw I fully owned it. It wasn't fun for them. Story 46. I look calmly over their shoulder and then shift my gaze to their eyes. I have found this is disarming, and I can return to what I was doing. Story 47. I'm an adult, so I don't get bullied. I think that word gets thrown around so often that it has lost all meaning. Some people are assholes. That doesn't make them bullies. If someone is an asshole to me, depending on the situation, I'll be an asshole back, ignore it, or report it to someone who can do something about it. Story 48. Just don't react and stay calm. If you respond, do so in a way that signals you don't really care about replying but are doing it anyway, and smile. Don't appear angry, irritated, or scared. They feed on that. Story 49. Now I'm an adult. My response is to ignore it and not lower myself to their immature level. When I was a kid, though, it hurt me deeply. Story 50. I get my hands all crotch sweaty, rub them together, and ask whether you want to go first or are more of a submissive in a one-on-one. Story 51. Silence is power. If a response feels forced, typically a well-worded question prompts them to explain their behavior. Story 52. Work around them. There are other people who are not only interested in wasting time. Story 53. I am a petty and vindictive person with nothing to lose. I will go to unreasonable lengths to get revenge. The hunter becomes the hunted. Story 54. I have tried to harm myself many times, and that hurt more than whatever is happening here. I am really sorry you are feeling so much pain. If you are in immediate danger or might act on these thoughts, please call your local emergency number right now. If you can, contact your country's suicide prevention hotline. In the United States, call or text 988. In the United Kingdom, call 116-123. If you want to talk more or need help finding resources, I am here to listen. Story 55. It depends on the setting, the intensity of the bullying, and how spicy I'm feeling. Story 56. I ignore them 3 times. After that, the fists take over. Story 57. The last time I got bullied was in grade school. In a weird prison yard setup, people would pick fights with me despite my being the biggest kid in school. It was a fight the biggest guy you see style of bullying. I would win and be really confused why they thought they could beat someone who was already 6 feet tall by 7th grade. Story 58. A copious amount of insults followed by thinly veiled threats of violence. Story 59. If they go low, I am going to meet the devil in hell because you are not going to play with me like that. Story 60. They can try, but since they would be people I do not care about, I would probably ignore them. Story 61. Let them try, then roll my eyes and say, I am very busy. Is that it? Or are you done wasting my time? Story 62. That is pretty cool. You must have read a joke book recently. I bet it was a good one. Story 63. Just ask them why they are being a cunt. I have not been bullied in a long time, and I do not have the patience to put up with any wanker who wants to try it on anymore. Story 64. I handle it the same way I always have. I treat them like the weirdest creature I have ever seen because bullies are odd as children and downright freakish as adults. Story 65. I was a bartender for 15 years. I am much better at being an asshole. Story 66. Please find something safe to do. I am certified and unable to get government assistance at the moment. Story 67. I laugh, just like I did as a child. Why do you allow someone to make you miserable? My life has been a complete shit show. Someone's stupid words or physical violence were nothing compared to what life has thrown at me. Story 68. The last bully who confronted me was Cheryl. In 1978, Cheryl followed me down the hallway at high school, shouting insults. I kept walking as if nothing had happened and let her shout for everyone to hear. She became frustrated and yelled, "Turn around and look at me when I'm talking to you, bitch." I did not turn around or say a word. I just kept walking down the hall, greeting friends who passed by. She looked foolish and was furious. I don't remember much about her after that. Story 69. Collect and record evidence and report it to the police, the landlord, the employer, or anyone else in a position to correct the behavior. Story 70. Say a chew, then headbutt them in the nose. Give them a cold stare in silence. Then walk away. Story 71. When I was younger, I fought a lot. I was an overweight Asian kid who grew up in Section 8 housing in a horrible inner-city neighborhood. If I didn't want to be bullied, I had to fight to show I would not be pushed around. It was a horrible idea. I'm 32 now and working as a nurse. If someone bullies me, I just ignore it and move on with my life. Story 72. Depending on the situation, I will either mess with them by playing dumb or directly bully them back. Story 73. Take your pants off and fight him naked. He will not do that again, I guarantee it. Story 74. Keep it up. Wood chippers are on sale. I was never afraid of school or neighborhood bullies. My dad and my aunt taught us how to fight and never be bullied. Mom was a pacifist. I even beat up the neighborhood bully at the bus stop one morning. The next day he had his friends with him, but they didn't do a damn thing. Story 75. Bully them back. Violence can only be resolved with violence. Story 76. I have never allowed anyone to bully me, physically or mentally. My reaction is usually directly proportional to the bully's effort. Story 77. I am 61, so I do not take any nonsense from anyone anymore. When I was 5, John Lively, also 5, tormented me as we walked home from elementary school. I poked him in the face with my umbrella, leaving a scar on the side of his nose that he carried through 6th grade. It looks like I had been aiming for his left eye and missed. He never bothered me again. Story 78. I am 52 years old now, and it still happens. The last incident was a few weeks ago at the end of my shift at work. We were all at the time clock, waiting for the last minute to pass so we could clock out when one of my coworkers came over and inserted himself ahead of me in line. I told him to get behind me, and he said he had been standing over to the side and kind of chuckled. I replied that it is not how lines work and that you do not get to go home before the rest of us. And I reiterated that he should get in line behind me. He eventually realized I was not joking and got in line behind me, although he has not really spoken to me since. I do not care if he ever talks to me, so I am fine with that, but the nerve of some people really surprises me. He was in the military, so I know he knows how lines work. They do not work by standing 6 feet off to the side because you want to scroll on your phone for privacy. He is even older than I am, so he has no real excuse other than that he wanted to see if I would allow it, and he got his answer. I do not know, but maybe he was trying to assert some asinine version of dominance, but I will not stand for that behavior anymore. Story 79. Put them on my list and wait for the right moment to retaliate anonymously. Revenge is a dish best served cold. Story 80. I stare at them in silence like a teacher with a bratty student, waiting for them to realize their usual crap will not fly this time. Bullies are cowards. Some hide it better than others, but ultimately they are all fearful of something, which is why they bully. In real life, I come across as fairly kind with a customer service face, so bullies think they can test me. It only happens once because I make sure they know I see through their nonsense and that I am not someone they can push around. I have beaten bigger, scarier bullies than they have. Story 81. I yawn loudly while they talk, stand there for a couple of seconds, then walk away. The important thing is not to take it seriously and to make that clear. Story 82. Nowadays, I tell them that if that's the best they've got, they should keep trying. I've been bullied since I was a kid by family members and others. Back then, I used to just fight back. Now it's not worth it. Sometimes it stings a bit, but I've been through worse. Story 83. Stare at them with an overly animated smile on my face, like an actor in a toothpaste commercial. That unsettles them rather quickly. Story 84. In middle school, my response was to let them shove me around until my back was against the bleachers, then judo throw them upside down onto the bleachers. After doing that twice, the bullying stopped. As an adult, I say, "Did I do something to offend you?" They either apologize or look like a jerk in front of everyone. Story 85. That would be strange for a 50-year-old woman. I would just look at them with an odd expression on my face. Story 86. Act your age, not your shoe size. If they will not relent, a fun, dismissive response like, "Cool story, bro," or "You don't say," often gets them to be quiet. Story 87. My former spouse was abusive. I was at a football game with my grandson, whom he had formally adopted. My ex-mother-in-law and his new girlfriend sat nearby, whispering, laughing, and looking at me. I calmly walked over, looked each of them in the eye, and asked what could be more interesting than my grandson's football game. The last time they bullied me, they all looked at the ground. No one had an answer. I did not make a scene. I remained low-key, and they have not bullied me since. Story 88. If someone makes me uncomfortable, I go the distance to make them uncomfortable. Keep the same energy. Story 89. I just leave my headphones in and ignore them. If I make eye contact, I give them the Buddy Christ gesture, wave, point, smile, and wink. Story 90. I give dry responses, and usually people give up after a bit. Some were really dedicated, though, and it took them a few months to stop. Story 91. Use all legal and civil mechanisms available to you. Story 92. I'm 21, and women in their 30s try to bully me. I start talking about random things because I'd rather listen to my own voice than theirs. Once they realize I don't care to hear anything, whether positive or negative, they usually go away. Story 93. Call him out on it. I was tired of my manager attempting to bully me, so I asked for a meeting with the owner and called him out, producing a diary documenting every occasion he had attempted to undermine me, leave me out of things, or say things behind my back to other employees. I believe he was trying to sabotage my department because we all worked well as a team. I asked him why in front of the owner, since it was his business that was being affected, and he just sat there, unable to respond. That was over a year ago. He has not done anything since, but I still keep a diary. Story 94. I am not sure. It has not happened in a long time. I would be surprised and then assess my immediate safety. My response would depend on who the bully is, how many there are, where it is taking place, whether I know them, and whether I can address it then or must address it later. Overall, bullies feed on a sense of superiority by causing pain to others. I feel sorry for them. The only way they seem to feel good about themselves is by putting others down. They are the ones with the problem, not you. Avoid them whenever possible. Story 95. I ignore them and block them. Sometimes I respond, but very rarely, and I usually end up unsending what I wanted to say because I do not want to escalate anything. Story 96. My response to bullying is to dig in my heels and stand up to it. Story 97. I just agree with them until they notice I have an earbud and tell me I'm not interested in what's being said. I'm just parroting words to end the conversation quickly. Story 98. Enthusiasm. Please target me. I can take it and I kind of like it. Bring it on, bitch. Story 99. What I've always done is laugh at them. Those few who tried to escalate things learned quickly that it was a very bad idea. Story 100. When I was a child, other children often bothered me, but I generally did not notice. Either they left me alone or they persisted, and I continued as normal. So that is my response, I guess. Story 101. I was bullied so much as a child that I eventually snapped and would not take it anymore. I remember walking back to class after gym one day. We were all in a single file line. The kid behind me kept intentionally stepping on the heel of my shoe. I asked him multiple times to stop. He did it one last time and my shoe flew off my foot. I picked it up and struck him in the head with it as hard as I could. He cried and I got in trouble. I realized that most bullies continue because they have never faced repercussions. I stood up for myself every day after that. Story 102. I am 55. There is no way in hell anyone will bully me. Thank you very much. Story 103. Silence and letting people hear how ridiculous they sound to their own ears usually does the trick. Story 104. The last time it happened was in middle school. I slammed a kid against the lockers and told him to stop. We ended up friends for the rest of my school years. I had been bullied a lot up to that point, and that day I was done. He later told me it worked because he thought I was crazy for grabbing him by the throat. Since he was much bigger than me then, that was the last day I was bullied. I even made another friend when the former bully and I stopped his bully from bothering him. Now I am 6'5" and have a naturally intimidating face, so no one bothers me. I would probably laugh if they did. Story 105, short term. From what others have said, I lose all control and charge at bullies when they trigger me. Long term, I apparently shut off emotions and social contact. Story 106. An entire Discord server of Hunger Games start your own topic writers united to bully me once. It was several months before I realized they were trying to make me angry because I cared so little about any of it. My response remains confused apathy. I continue to write my stories, most of which are inactive now. Story 107. I love it when people try to bully me at work. They think that because I am one of the oldest employees, they can get away with it. I laugh and say I love you too. I mean it. Story 108. I have been 6 feet 3 inches since I was 12. I was the tallest kid in every class I had until I went to college. It was never really an issue growing up. As an adult, I have encountered it a couple of times with coworkers at bars and so on. I mostly just laugh. Story 109. Just let me know if that put a few extra $1,000 in your bank account so I can start doing it too. Story 110. I'm 55. On the rare occasions it has happened, I simply ask what the fuck their problem is. I'll call out all the bad behavior now. Story 111. I am 30 years old. If it is physical bullying, I can involve the police. I also have enough influential friends in my community that anyone caught emotionally bullying me becomes a social pariah. If someone is being overly loud about a pride patch or pin on my backpack, I usually pretend I do not hear them to make them look foolish. The last time someone tried to pressure me to be either gay or straight, I am bisexual, I told them to change their sexuality. If another man is trying to intimidate me, I am 6 feet 1 inch, built like a bear, and naturally very strong. I do not always realize my own strength and often hold back. I puff out my chest and scowl, which usually makes them back off. I am usually with friends when this happens, so if it does not work, a non-pacifist friend usually steps in, often a thin 50-year-old woman I hang out with who is a black belt in karate, aikido, and judo. If forced to fight, I use drunken fist wushu, so the assailant looks like they just got beat up by a drunk even when I am sober. 3 years ago, an instructor at college tried to bully me into dropping the program. The only part of his downfall I played a role in was getting him fired. His house later burned down and he was diagnosed with testicular cancer. Both felt like karmic coincidences for how badly he had treated people. A boss actively discriminated against me because of my autism. I had him placed into forced retirement at age 82. I later regularly helped him load items into his vehicle. I committed to malicious compliance and gave him exceptionally good customer service out of spite so he could not legitimately complain about me. The one time he did complain, a coworker who was helping me with an order of about 40 sidewalk blocks vouched for me. I am allowed to eject entitled customers from the store where I currently work and have the authority to ban them. My boss has no patience for self-entitled customers who take out their anger on retail employees. Story 112. I guess I laugh at the effort. I am 6 feet 5 inches. Most of the time I just look down on them and smile. Story 113. Around 5th grade, the instinct was to punch them right back. However, once you turn 18, that response becomes complicated and immature. Story 114. I dig my heels in and double down. You cannot outfox a fox. My mom used to say that the world is a tough teacher. As you get older, you learn and become wiser. I will never let anyone push me around. Story 115. I heard someone once say, I can draw you pregnant. Don't forget that. That managed to shut things down pretty quickly. Story 116. Be silent until I am able to leave. I will not bandy words with a witless worm. Story 117. As a 41-year-old adult, I am mostly confused. If I cannot leave, I experience intense rage, threats, or resort to legal action. Story 118. The only people bullying me are 4 and 3, and there is not much I can do about it. Story 119. I laugh with them, agree, and laugh harder with wide eyes until they become uncomfortable and stop. Bullies expect you to react negatively and want you to. They do not expect an unhinged reaction. If you act visibly unstable, people become uncomfortable quickly. Story 120. Raise one eyebrow and look at them silently before going back to whatever I need to be doing. I'm in my 40s. I don't give two shits about someone being petty, passive-aggressive, or just plain stupid as long as I don't have to clean up a mess. If I have to clean up a mess they make, I'll have words with them. Story 121. Both now and in the past, I have found the best response is to ignore them. They are trying to earn brownie points from so-called friends by making someone else feel bad and then laughing at their pain. I ignore them and they eventually go away without getting that payoff. I am in Canada, a single white male over 70, with long hair and earrings. In the last 6 years I have had no problems, and people in stores and elsewhere treat me with respect and kindness. Ignore them and move on as soon as possible. Story 122. I laugh harder as I walk away, pointing. I am old. I am used to it. Story 123. This wasn't exactly bullying, but one of my neighbors told me I shouldn't be friends with someone who lives across the street from us. He usually gives me the cold shoulder. I told him he had no right to tell me who I should be friends with, that he should mind his own business and to grow up. He never bothered me again. Story 124. I saw a t-shirt on an episode of Last Week Tonight that said, "Don't bully me. I'll come." I think this would stop them in their tracks. Story 125. As a teenager, if somebody tried it, and that really didn't happen often, I was always pretty tall and big, I told them to stop. If they didn't stop, I delivered an ass-whooping. I also did that when I wasn't even the victim but saw someone trying to bully a weaker person. I always hated it when people tried to bully someone weaker. Fuck you. Pick someone your own size. Usually they stopped after I said something. Bullies are not brave. Nowadays, as a grown man of almost 40, nobody tries to bully me. But if someone did, I guess I would do the same thing I did as a teenager. Story 126. It kind of happened to me recently on my college campus when a bunch of Make America Great Again grifters showed up. At first I just poked holes in what they said and tried to make them feel foolish for even being there. Why are you here? It's 3 in the afternoon on a Monday. Don't you have work, a family, and so on? Why are you yelling at young people? It's creepy. But they wanted a reaction, so I started derailing it, showing them brain rot memes and asking if they would answer John Pork and things like that. They were so confused that they kind of forgot what they were even doing. Story 127. Sorry, what was that? I wasn't listening. What? Speak up. I can't hear you. Use your grown-up voice. Mumble. Who let you out of the nursing home? When did we start hiring from daycares? Who are you again? Make direct and uncomfortable eye contact with their soul and blink as little as possible the entire time they are talking. Then say, sorry, I was spacing out. I didn't get any of that. Tune out and randomly ask them to say that again. Apply my dead-eyed retail look. Interrupt with cool story, champ, and walk away. Very situational. Rip one, then ask if they smell popcorn. If I wanted someone to nag me, I would have stayed home today. Can you hurry this up? I have to go destroy the shitter. Ask them to hold something heavy in place, then leave. Story 128. Honestly, just 2 things, ignorance and success. There is no point in reciprocating adolescent insecure behavior. I was recently bullied by a guy I dated. We are both in our 30s, and I just kept doing my thing and ignored him. Whoever it is, just ignore them and know who you are when you look in the mirror. Story 129. call it out. Then they get defensive and you have lost them. Laughing out loud. Story 130. I am a 40-year-old man. I do not even know what to do at this point. Laughing out loud. Story 131. I'm an all of the above type of gal. I have no clue what I'm going to do, as I am impulsive, short-tempered, and my behavior is peculiar. Story 132. I am 43 years old, 6 feet 3 inches, and 225 pounds, and I work out. It would be strange if I were bullied now. In the past, I was not necessarily bullied, but I would respond quickly with a joke when someone teased me. If that did not work, I was not afraid to start a fight. You will either beat me or I will beat you. Story 133. Speak softly and intelligently, and carry a big intellectual stick. Story 134. I'm sorry. I think you were trying to say something. I wasn't paying attention. Can you repeat that? Story 135. If someone tries to bully me into doing something I do not want to do, I smile and say I need to think about it for a while. If someone resorts to name-calling, I smirk and say whatever. Story 136. Perplexity does not work. Moreover, it leaves me wondering why anyone would think it would with any adult. Story 137. Thank them for their useless option, effort, and emotions. Outline that they have a lot of inner work to do. Wish them a good day. Story 138. Noted. Anyway, continue with what I was doing. Indifference annoys them greatly. Story 139. I became very good at feint attacks. I can get very close with a slap but never hit anyone. It is a fun party trick. Story 140. I might feel sad and upset about it for a while. I quietly realize that someone is bothered enough by my existence to make it known and takes pleasure in their hatred or discomfort because they find it funny. Story 141. First, your breath smells. Second, compared to what? Story 142. Immediately throw it back in their face and do not let them interject. They deserve to be belittled so they know how it feels. If someone disrespects you, do not let them continue to do so without consequence. Story 143. Remove me from the situation as quickly as possible. Story 144. I just look at them with all the indifference I can muster and wait for them to finish whatever nonsense they are saying. Story 145. At 28, I stare at people with a blank, vacant expression, as if looking through them. If they persist, I either walk away, uncaring, or say, thanks. If you want to continue this conversation, I will wait outside after work. Your choice. Is this the right option? No. Does it work? It worked for me a few times, and since leaving school I have not been bullied or insulted. Story 146. What do you mean, at work? If someone asks me to work nights or weekends, I say, sorry, I cannot. I have a prior obligation. I give no additional details. If they ask what I am doing, I say, I'm sorry, but it is a personal obligation and I cannot discuss the details. End the conversation. Never budge. They do not need to know that I am going to sit at my computer and play Silksong. If someone is being disrespectful, I tell them privately, look, that was not appropriate. I would appreciate it if you were more considerate in the future. That is the only warning. If they repeat the behavior, the next step is a message to human resources. Story 147. You say yes, officer, and do what they tell you. Then sue for unlawful arrest later. Story 148. Now that I am older, I just ignore them and walk away. If they lay hands on me, I scream and call the police. Story 149. I normally ask them if they are okay to see whether they realize how they are behaving. Story 150. As an adult in my 40s, I just leave. I might say I'm out. I don't have time for that anymore. As a kid, I went through it and became violent. It got me in trouble, but it quickly put a stop to the worst of it. Story 151. I am extremely confrontational. I love crushing bullies, and I am good at it verbally or otherwise. Story 152. When I'm walking in our neighborhood in the Hollywood Hills and a neighbor tries to say something to me, I say, sorry, I can't hear you. I have my earbuds in. The funny thing is I do not even wear them. Story 153. I am used to being called names and treated badly. It does not bother me. I can easily see through that nonsense. I am also very clever and will outsmart you. Good luck with your bullying. Story 154. Ignore or laugh. If the bullying is from family and is ongoing, I frequently cut them off. I am often too stunned to respond, but when it becomes unbearable, I block contact completely. They cannot bully me if I have blocked them. Story 155. I loudly narrate what they are doing as if it is a nature show and I am a scientist studying sociopaths. It is weird and probably embarrassing for everyone, but I own the narrative. Story 156. 1,000-yard stare. Don't look at them. Look through them. Most people get unnerved by the intensity of the confrontation and back down. Story 157. It does not happen, so I am not sure. My goal would be to act like I am getting off on it and beg them for more. Story 158. I worked 27 years in prison. I give no fucks. The best thing I learned during my service is to give no feedback to a bully. Just a blank stare. Story 159. I walked away. I worked with sneaky bullies, and except for my last manager, I ignored them. With my last manager, I took action. Story 160. I used to take it as a kid, but now I will just walk away or ignore them as if they are not there. I value my time and energy too much to waste on them. Story 161. I look like a Neanderthal, I have a good glare, and I am probably the strongest person at the company where I work. It has been a long time since someone has tried. When I was a kid, I would provoke fights or attack bullies because I found that, win or lose, they would stop right away. Unfortunately, I moved a lot as a child, so I was in many fights over the years. Story 162. A pointedly dismissive, light-hearted chuckle tends to take the wind out of their sails. Story 163. Most likely I would glare at them briefly and keep doing whatever I am doing. I might leave if I feel there is a real danger. Can I get an actual scenario? What does random adult bullying even look like? I have worked in customer service, and sometimes people have tried to bully me there. Usually you stick to policy and call for a manager or another employee to support you. You do not have to be friendly, but you must stay professional and matter-of-fact about what you will or will not do. Story 164. I look them up and down in a very direct manner, then say classy in a snarky tone with an all-knowing nod. Everyone understands me, young or old, rich or poor. They know I consider them of inferior character based on their actions. My comment is so benign that no one ever challenges me, but they definitely get my meaning. Story 165. All bullies are cowards at heart. The best response is aggression. Most bullies are stupid and will back down when logically challenged. You must set aside emotions to think clearly. Story 166. As a 35-year-old, I mostly ignore them and sometimes laugh. As a hot-headed kid in high school who held a grudge, I resorted to violence and bullying. I would hurt people and then mock them whenever I saw them trying to bully someone else. Story 167. I do not know what your situation is, but I was fortunate with the people at my school or university. I resolved every conflict through communication. At worst, when you feel like you are talking to a wall, ignore it. In extreme cases, do not be afraid to ask for help. Story 168. Something like, PSHH, and walk away. I don't have time for that. I used to drop everything and throw down at the slightest provocation, but with the medical system being what it is, it's water off a duck's back. I've been known to loudly ask, do I look like somebody you want to mess with? When people get cute. Is my dad coming out? Story 169. I am not afraid of you. Go over their heads and fight like hell. Story 170. I bully myself with the same comments, then I bully others with insults after they fall silent and do not know what to say. Story 171. I have a boomer at work who is trying to bully me. I just scroll through Reddit and act oblivious to her. The wild thing is I am 51. Why this woman thinks she will get any reaction is beyond me. Story 172. That's it? My man, I say worse shit to myself when I wake up. Be more creative. Insult my glasses, my skin, my pets, my habits, my work, something. Story 173. In school, I tried to get away. In grade school, I was very small. I was only 5 feet tall in 8th grade. It happened less in high school because I could outrun them. I ran cross country and track. Now, as an adult, it does not happen physically. I am over 6 feet tall, over 200 pounds, and in decent shape. Emotionally and mentally, it does not happen either. I am pretty confident, which makes it difficult for people to harass me. People cannot effectively pick on someone who does not care what they say. Story 174. Look smug and avoid reacting unless it is to point out their childishness. Story 175. I bully them back. With some people, there is no better way to anger them than to treat them exactly as they treat others. Story 176. Are you done? Do you feel better about yourself now? I need to leave. I do not have time for childish games. Story 177. At my age, if people try to harm me, I have resources to make them regret it. I overreact, but now it hurts them financially and emotionally. For example, if you run over my foot, I will wreck your car. I am older and have more insurance coverage. Story 178. My mind just goes, you're weird for that. Lo and behold, I'm 27. Story 179. I'm not sure how I would react. I don't experience this behavior anymore, mostly because my neutral face makes people think I am considering the best ways to kill them. More people than you would expect have told me this after they got to know me. When I was in high school, I did not handle it well, mainly because I looked 11 until my senior year. Story 180. I tolerate it for a while. Who knows what is going on in their life to make them act that way? Then I reach my limit and I tell them off. Story 181. Ask them to repeat themselves if you did not hear and ask again if necessary. Man, they look stupid. Story 182. Physically, I stick the nut on them. Psychologically, let them know I'm aware and that they better fuck off. Story 183. I am 36, and it does not really happen now. On the odd occasion I have sensed bullying, I have either laughed it off when it did not put me at risk, or I have brushed it off and moved on if laughing might escalate the situation or put me in danger. Story 184. It took me years to realize the bullying was abuse, and I've learned to set boundaries and to understand why people do cruel things. Story 185. I was bullied a lot when I was younger, but I grew into a large man and no one tries that anymore. If they did, they would not like the result. Story 186. That has not always been my response. I try to slowly keep my distance, assuming it started out as a friendship. I stay far enough away to protect myself but close enough that they do not suspect anything and think we are still friends. If it did not start out as a friendship, I would probably do the same. It is easier because we were not friends. Story 187. I hit them with silence. Nothing confuses a bully more than no reaction. Story 188. I get along with almost everyone, and I am confident enough not to give negative people a second thought. Story 189. A sudden strike to the throat. No words, just action. Watch their eyes. They cannot believe what has happened. They cannot breathe. Their eyes widen. They panic, attempting to retaliate before losing consciousness from lack of oxygen. Then they collapse, able only to make a gurgling sound. Story 190. I usually laugh. I have already said 1,000 times worse to myself than anyone could conjure up. Yes, I am bald and short. Am I chubby too? I never noticed. I also look like Uncle Fester. Look how dark my eyes are. Story 191. That has never happened to me. I would probably do nothing because why give them the attention they want? Story 192. If someone is verbally catty to my face, I ask what they mean as many times as necessary until they are squirming from their own truth. If someone is openly making fun of me in a group setting, I might say something incredibly immature like, "That is not what your mom said last night," and follow up with, "Since we are acting like we are 12. If someone is physically bullying me, I would record it and press charges. I have also been known to swear at people in German, which is a great tool for a petite, Elfish woman like me who has no other physical attribute that is in any way scary or intimidating. Story 193. I had a very odd experience when a gas pump would not work, so I went inside to tell them. The man behind the counter must have been having a bad day and was very confrontational. After several minutes of trying to pay for gas, I decided it was not worth my time and walked away in mid-conversation. He started following me and shouted juvenile threats such as, "I should kick your ass." I kept walking to my car until I heard him getting closer behind me. I turned and told him he really did not want to fight. My tone made the point. I said it so it did not sound boastful, but so that a fight would seem tedious. My blasé, tired response to his bluster seemed to convince him. Story 194. Sometimes, it helps to treat certain comments as background noise. That line really sums up how I deal with bullies. At this point in my life, I honestly don't care. They're the problem, not me. Story 195. This feels a bit like a power play. What are you trying to achieve here? Story 196. My mother, who is half German and half Mexican, is the biggest bully I have ever had. Everyone else is easy by comparison and cannot hurt me. I have adamantium skin that I developed when I was young. Story 197. I am sorry, are you still trying to be a junior high bully? It also depends on whether they are trying to bully you into doing something you do not want to do. In that case, I might say that peer pressure stopped working back in high school when you peaked. Either way, the answer is to always laugh, never get upset, and explain how much nicer their life could be if they did not stay so angry. Story 198. The last time this happened to me, it was about my appearance and directed at my face. I told them negative things about their appearance. They looked stunned and eventually stopped. Story 199. I'm in my 40s. I can't summon the energy to care what people think of me anymore. Story 200. Nowadays I am going to fight back. I am not going to tolerate being bullied again. Story 201. I'm old. If I get bullied, I just sleep with their mothers. Story 202. Kill them with kindness. It's very hard to be mean to someone who's being ridiculously nice to you. It works every time. Story 203. I made a short and apparently confusing Reddit post last night in a Star Trek subreddit, and someone literally called me a loser, saying I was not very good at starting a bot. I responded, "That's cruel. I'm old. I don't even know what starting a bot is." To their credit, they apologized and deleted the comment. I was embarrassed and deleted my entire post. I have to chuckle. I was bullied by Trekkies. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.